You smile, even when something inside you is quietly breaking. Not a forced smile, a real one. Warm enough to fool everyone in the room, including sometimes yourself. And the strangest part? The deeper the pain, the bigger the smile gets. People call you the happy one, the strong one, the one who always has it together. But you're watching this right now, and something in you already knows you haven't truly been okay in a long time. And what's even stranger is that you're not sure when it started. You just know the smile came first and the explanation never followed. Here's what nobody tells you. Science has a name for this, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why you do it and why stopping feels almost impossible. Stay with me, because what comes next might be the most accurate thing you've ever heard about yourself. Welcome to Psychology Explained, where we uncover the hidden patterns driving your behavior. If you've ever been called the happy one while quietly carrying something heavy, this video was made for you. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time someone asked if you were okay, and you actually told them the truth? Not the polished truth, not the "I'm just tired" truth, the real one. Because here's what most people never realize. You reply "I'm fine" faster than you can even feel what you're actually feeling. It's not a lie you choose. It comes out automatically, like muscle memory. And that's exactly what it is. Psychologists call this emotional masking. And it's rooted in something called display rules, a theory developed by researcher Paul Ekman that explains how we learn, usually in childhood, which emotions are acceptable to show and which ones need to disappear. You aren't born smiling through pain. You are trained to. Not always with words. Sometimes just by watching what happened when you were sad versus when you stayed calm. Maybe your emotions made others uncomfortable. Maybe being okay kept the peace. So your brain made a decision, and it made it without asking you. But here's the part nobody expects. This isn't just a habit. This is biology running a program you didn't write. When you suppress genuine pain and replace it with warmth and pleasantness, your nervous system activates what researchers call the fawn response. Most people have heard of fight or flight. Very few people know about fawn. It's the trauma response where instead of fighting back or running away, you become agreeable, charming, easy to be around, because somewhere deep in your nervous system, being likable feels safer than being honest. Your smile in those moments isn't just a mask, it's a survival strategy, and your body built it automatically to protect you from something it once decided was dangerous. The terrifying question is, what was it protecting you from? And this is where it gets dangerous. Have you ever noticed that when you're the most hurt, you become almost magnetic? The funniest one in the room. The most helpful friend. The one who checks on everyone else while silently falling apart inside. You laugh the loudest when you're hurting the most. And somehow, the applause you get for being so strong makes it harder to ever take the mask off. There's a name for this too. Reaction formation, first described by Freud, where the mind takes an emotion too painful to express and flips it into its opposite. Grief becomes humor. Loneliness becomes generosity. Heartbreak becomes the energy you pour into everyone else's problems. Your brain says, that feeling is too much. Let's turn it into something people will love you for. And it works. Which is exactly why it becomes a trap. Most people never realize this next part. Every time you smile through real pain, you create what psychologists call an emotional debt. The feeling doesn't disappear, it goes underground, it compounds, and it starts surfacing in ways you can't explain. Sudden crashes at night when the room goes quiet, exhaustion that no amount of sleep touches, snapping at small things, feeling completely numb during moments that should matter. You feel guilty for being sad around others, so you bury it deeper. And the cycle tightens. Think about a duck gliding across a pond, perfectly still on the surface. Calm, effortless, but underneath the water its legs are working frantically just to stay in place. That's you in every room you've ever walked into, smiling while carrying something nobody could see. And here's what most people aren't ready to hear. What happens when those legs finally stop moving is something we need to talk about. Because it doesn't end the way most people think it does. So what actually happens when those legs stop moving? When the duck beneath the surface finally exhausts itself. Most people assume someone like you would break down, cry, fall apart publicly. But that's not what happens. And this is the part that will genuinely surprise you. People who smile through deep pain don't collapse dramatically. They go quiet, suddenly, without warning. One day they're the life of every conversation, and the next day they're just unreachable. Not angry, not dramatic, just gone. And everyone around them says the same thing. But they always seemed so happy. That's not a coincidence. That's the pattern completing itself. Here's why. When emotional debt accumulates long enough without release, the brain does something fascinating and frightening at the same time. It stops generating the mask, not because you chose to drop it, but because the system that was running it runs out of fuel. Psychologists call this emotional exhaustion, and it sits at the core of something called compassion fatigue, a state where a person who has spent so long managing everyone else's emotions and hiding their own simply loses the capacity to feel much of anything. Not sadness, not joy, just a flat, gray numbness that's somehow harder to explain than pain ever was. And the cruelest irony? People around you often don't notice, because your silence looks like peace from the outside. But stay with me, because this next part is where everything starts to make sense. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. Who taught you that your pain was too much? Think about it honestly. Was it a parent who needed you to be strong? A friendship where you were always the therapist, never the patient? A relationship where showing vulnerability once got used against you? Because here's what the research actually shows. People who develop this pattern of smiling through pain almost always learned it as a response to an environment where their emotional honesty had a cost. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading trauma researchers, spent decades studying how the body holds emotional experiences the mind tries to move past. His findings were clear. When we repeatedly override genuine emotion with performed emotion, the body keeps a record. The tension lives in your jaw, your shoulders, the tightness in your chest that you've learned to breathe around. You didn't just learn to hide your feelings from other people. You learned to hide them from yourself. And that's not weakness. That is one of the most sophisticated forms of self-protection the human mind can develop. And this is where most people never get told the truth. That protection served you once. It genuinely did. There was probably a version of you, younger and more vulnerable, for whom that smile was the smartest tool available. It kept relationships intact. It kept environments safe. It kept you likable in rooms where being unlikable had consequences. But here's the problem with armor. It doesn't know when the war is over. It keeps running the same program even when you're no longer in danger. Even when the people around you now are safe. Even when someone is genuinely asking if you're okay and actually meaning it, your nervous system doesn't know the difference. It just knows the smile worked before, so it fires again. Automatically. Before you can choose otherwise. Now here's the piece that changes everything, and I need you to actually sit with this one. Healing for someone like you doesn't look like breaking down. It doesn't look like finally crying in front of someone or having one honest conversation that fixes everything. Healing, for people who smile through pain, looks like learning to pause before the automatic response fires. Just a half second. A breath between the question and the answer. Long enough to ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Not what's safe to say. What's actually true. Psychologists call this emotional granularity, the ability to identify specific emotions rather than just masking them under a blanket of fine. And research from Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett shows that people with higher emotional granularity experience less anxiety, recover faster from difficult experiences, and build significantly deeper relationships. The ability to say, I'm not fine, I'm actually scared and exhausted and I don't know why, instead of, I'm good. That single shift is more powerful than years of pretending. You don't have to perform anymore. Not here, not in the comments, not with the people who actually deserve the real version of you. So here's what I want you to do right now. In the comments, I want you to type one of these numbers. Type 1 if you recognized yourself in this video. Type 2 if someone else came to mind while watching. Type 3 if you've been carrying something for so long you've forgotten what it felt like to put it down. No explanation needed, just a number. Because sometimes, the first honest thing you say doesn't need words. And if this video made you feel seen, if it said something you've never been able to say out loud, subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but because this channel exists for exactly the kind of person who watches something like this alone, at night, and thinks finally someone gets it. That's who we make this for. That's who you are. Next video, we're going into something even deeper. Have you ever wondered why some people feel most comfortable right at the edge of losing everything? Why chaos feels more familiar than calm? Why some people unconsciously sabotage the good things, the good relationships, the good opportunities, right when they're finally within reach? The psychology behind it is darker than you'd expect, and far more common than anyone admits. That video drops soon, and if this one found you at the right moment, that one might change something in you permanently.